I love ravioli.
Ho tanta fame.
Since when do you speak Italian?
Since we partnered with SAP Concur, their integrated travel and expense platform and breakthrough solutions with AI gave me time back to dive into our financial future. We expand into Europe in 2027, so I'm getting ready.
Well, you can predict the future?
I can predict you'll like that message.
What message? Whoa, hey, we all got bonuses.
You can save for college now.
I don't have kids.
You don't say.
SAP Concur helps your business move forward faster. Learn more at concur.com.
Hey guys, have you heard of Goldbelly? It's this amazing site where they ship the most iconic, famous foods from restaurants across the country. Anywhere, nationwide. I've never found a more perfect gift than food. Goldbelly ships Chicago deep dish pizza, New York bagels, Maine lobster rolls, and even Ina Garden's famous cakes. So, if you're looking for a gift for the food lover in your life, head to goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT. That's goldbelly.com, promo code GIFT.
The left versus the right. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
I know you all keep writing the station, and you're upset that Mr. Katsimatidis hasn't done anything about it. And I know that some of you would like to change the channel on your radio right now, but you won't because you don't have the guts to. Because this is the left versus the right. This is what's really going on. It's 3 o'clock on a Saturday. What else could you be doing, particularly with the way the weather is these days? I'm David Paterson, and I have to come out of my role and show some remorse and sympathy at what has happened to my co-host today and friend, James Flippin. He actually had to access a mental health advisor over the past couple of days because he was so smitten and then crestfallen by what's happened with President Donald Trump and would-be President Elon Musk. How are you feeling, James?
Well, Governor Paterson, first of all, let me just say that it's great to be back on the show with you. I always enjoy our chats. And yes, that's 100% true. I have been seeking mental health counseling over the past few days because of my deep emotional misgivings at the level of uncertainty I'm feeling amid the ongoing Trump-Musk beef, the rift. This was all the rage in politics. The last time I was doing this show with you, we were talking about the buddy cop movie that was with Trump and Musk. And this whole split that they're having, I really want Governor Paterson to try to almost allow you to help me to try to counsel through this major schism that's now happened on the right. And I sort of look at it this way. I'm curious to get your take on it. There's two main driving points of contention behind this kind of disagreement between Musk and Trump. Now, let's just set aside egos and personalities and all that. Maybe it's impossible to do that here. But from Musk's perspective, it's all about the deficit. It's all about the $37 trillion. It's all about the possibility of bankruptcy, the dollar losing its worth, insolvency, whatever. For Trump, I think he's being a total hawk and singularly focused almost on the issue of the border. And you need the money in the bill to be able to secure the border, hire more border agents, have more things in place. So you've got these two main things that from a right of center perspective are areas of focus: cracking down on illegal immigration and cracking down on the ever-growing, ever-present deficit as driven by federal spending. So it's hard for me, as someone who considers himself a conservative, to decide which one of those is more important.
So I will come over to the right for a few minutes.
Okay.
Half my family thinks I'm already there. And what I would say is this was a situation where had it been 10, 15 years ago and both President Trump and Elon Musk were out of office, they probably would have agreed, because most movements are looking for a complete overturn of the government, one way or the other. Mm-hmm. And both of them could have gone along with that. But as you pointed out, and I think this is the main point, President Trump's hallmark is that he's closed down the border. And he can't come up short here, or it would really create some redress for him. So, in my view, there are probably things about the bills I would object to, but I think the overall idea is that he did cut the spending. He is increasing the savings. He's putting in a plan that would hopefully stop runaway inflation and runaway spending that other administrations have engaged in. So that's what he's doing. Elon Musk, as I see it, is talking the way people would have talked years ago. You know what they need to do? They need to go in there and cut everything, and no more money for anything other than throwing migrants out of the country who don't need to be here, and maybe charter schools, something like that.
Right.
It's an extreme point of view, and he's taking this extreme point of view, and then when he saw President Trump's press conference on Thursday, he erupted after that press conference because it didn't sound to him like it was going there. It was going someplace. He was almost accusing Trump of giving in to the left or to the center, or something like that.
Well, I mean, I think that's fair. Like, again, this is the part of it that has me so torn, right? I consider myself a Trump supporter, voted for him 3 times now, and as far back as 2015, when it was still the rest of the Republican primary field trying to shake themselves out, I was MAGA. So I support the president's agenda. I understand the importance of securing the border. I think codifying the tax cuts makes all the sense in the world, and I'm in favor of that. But when I hear some of this stuff about if we don't codify those tax cuts, then the midterm elections are going to go the other way. And when I hear some of this stuff about, Trump was elected to have his agenda put into place and it sounds a lot like it's business as usual. It sounds a lot like it's the establishment is winning. It sounds a lot like, because this is Republicans, we need this particular aspect of government spending. And there's a part of me that says that's not acceptable. There is no tomorrow. We're talking about the possibility of bankruptcy for the United States. We're talking about the insolvency of the federal government. Governor Paterson, at this point, we're adding around $1 trillion to the deficit every 12 months. And you look at some of the numbers, in 2019, for example, Washington spent $4.5 trillion, or just under 21% of the GDP. Today, that's closer to $7 trillion, or just over 23% of GDP. I get it that COVID was in there, but this federal government is completely unhinged, completely separated from the rest of us as Americans and taxpayers and whatever. And I don't buy that it's just past this one. We're going to get to it next time. I'm telling you, we're going to get to that deficit. No, the time is now. And I understand that there's a need in this reconciliation process to get some of your agenda items through, and it's a lower margin to getting something passed and all that. I get it. Politics. I'm aware of politics. But there's a bunch of us that are saying, hey, I'd like my retirement money to be worth something 30 or 40 years from now.
Well, I think those are very fair points. I really do. That this would be, that there was perhaps an opportunity here for major change like has never been seen before. It would really enhance the things that President Trump was talking about when he was a candidate. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem is that a lot of these major changes might not work for other Republicans. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Trump wanted to have that battle right now. He's really just a few votes short of having the votes to pass the big, beautiful bill. And and I don't think he wants to be dissuaded by anyone telling him you didn't go far enough. Because I think he knows that in this case, he candidly knows that sometime next year he'll get to the rest of this. That's what I think. Now, like you, I could see myself feeling that somebody came up short of what they were talking about doing when they were campaigning. But I think in this case, and I think I didn't vote for President Trump.
Right.
And I wasn't happy with the results of the election.
Yes.
But I think that he has a plan where we've only really seen the beginning of it, and he's told us what the end of it's going to be. And as much as I might not like it, I think he can make that work.
Well, and Governor Paterson, let me just say also that this couch in your office is very comfy. I'm enjoying this mental health counseling. You're an absolutely excellent counselor here on the left versus the right. And I'm James Flippin. If you're just tuning in, it's been nice to be back here on these airwaves. I've been in contact with a lot of people, both Democrats and Republicans in recent days, kind of sharing my feelings on this, right? Like how torn I really think I am in terms of what side are you on? Trump, Musk, deficit, border, all this kind of thing. The one thing I'll say, and I'm kind of curious to get your take on it from like a political perspective, because I feel like you're alluding to this, is some people on the Republican side have said they're supporting the so-called big, beautiful bill because they think that you need to do something about securing the border in order to have even maybe a hope of having some future agenda items that could make sense. So whether it's an amendment, something that I've wanted to see happen for years, that codifies how much Congress can spend as a percentage of GDP each year, if there's some way that we can kind of actually put the handcuffs on the purse strings for that federal government to kind of have a fighting chance.
Right. And only in an emergency would we stray from it.
Right, exactly. Then that would be something that I would be really interested in. But I guess that's the part of it that's sort of convincing to me, right? Is that I can't just force my own mindset and agenda on a White House. They have their own game plan. They figure that they need to pass this in order to actually go at. I think it's just, for me, it's like, I know my history. Ronald Reagan said, we just need to do amnesty this time, and then we're going to secure the border and figure out this whole immigration thing, and we're going to have new legislation, and da-da-da-da-da. And guess what happens? Presidents come and go, Congresses change, and all of a sudden it's just the yawning chasm of debt that continues to happen because everybody's got their special projects they want paid for.
And that is what I came up against in 2008, particularly in the summer of 2008 and into 2009, when I realized that if we, James, had a budget that had increased by 3 times, so it went from $7 billion in deficit to $21.3 billion. Mm-hmm. And I decided if we did not take that whole $21.3 billion out, we'd be chasing debt for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And the first person who would be connected to it would be me.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I went for all of it. And I didn't get quite all of it the first time, but I eventually did. And but what I would say is, you're right. If you don't confront a particular issue, you may never see it again.
Yeah.
The same players won't be there anymore. Then there'll be a different president, and then it's history that never became history because nobody really acted at the right time. So I don't think that you have to be too more upset. I would say 2 more Motrins, maybe 3, and
then call you in the morning.
And I think by tomorrow morning you can call me and tell me that you're feeling a lot better.
Well,
I'm glad that you're on the road
Doc,
to recovery.
I appreciate that. I really do. And but I think that your point that you just made there is kind of stirring back up in me a thought, which is that with Doge and with this whole idea of cutting government spending, the amount of money that any one line item on Doge was going to save was in the like millions, maybe billions of dollars or whatever. But we're talking about $37 trillion in debt, and it's growing all the time.
Wow.
I thought the goal was with Doge to almost sort of do something symbolic, almost do something that was really more about the statement that was being made. And that's where I feel disheartened by this particular process, because it's like, well, but if we don't codify the tax cuts, then the midterms aren't going to go our way.
Right.
Well, we're not trying to play that game anymore, guys.
Right.
I thought Trump was basically going to say, look, I'm not up for election again. It doesn't really matter to me. You guys want to impeach me the second half of my term? I'm sure you will, especially if you have the numbers in Congress. But we're drawing a line in the sand and saying it's got to go the other way. The bus has to start backing up. We got to start turning the Titanic a little bit so that somewhere down the line, we can kind of come back a little bit from all this growth of debt, which is really just robbing our future from out from under us. I mean, that's the way that I look at it. I do both understand that there's the other side, which is, look, the making of the sausage, the politics process, it's ugly. I guess it's asking for some level of trust in what the Trump White House priority is going to be, cutting that federal largesse, cutting that federal spending, and really making it part of their priority. I find myself very skeptical and very suspicious that we're all being taken for a ride again on this politics game.
Very incisive, very well thought out, and certainly very relevant. So I thought another way to cheer you up would be to go from the sublime to the ridiculous.
Okay.
Who the hell does Elon Musk think he is to accuse the president of being on the list?
Yeah. The Epstein list.
The Epstein list. And I mean, when he did that, a lot of, I don't know if you noticed the tweets people were tweeting. Is this just a joke? Are they just playing around? Mm-hmm. When you play the Jeffrey Epstein card, you're not playing around anymore.
It's a fascinating point, Governor, because there's a part of me that is somewhat suspicious in a different way as to whether or not this could all be a work, if this could all be a show, a sleight of hand.
Right.
We know Trump is into Sun Tzu and the Art of War. He's in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, so this is certainly something that could play into that type of thing. The one thing that I'll say in regard to the Epstein list and that being invoked, because it did immediately, that was like a big juicy, it's like, whoa, okay, it's getting ugly here. Now you're starting to see some people on both sides of the aisle, maybe more than even there ever were, who are saying, ooh, I want to see that Epstein list then. I want to see that come out. I want to see that come out. We need to see that Epstein list. More people than prior to Thursday, let's say, are now saying that. So in a weird way, maybe that was almost part of their plan, is like, oh, well, if Trump's on there, we want to see it. Oh, you want to see it now? Okay, then let's go ahead and release this. And you might be sorry as to what you see.
Now, James, I would never have been on the Epstein list. I'm just telling you that. I would never have been on the Epstein list. You know why?
I thought there was a secondary part to that. Why?
Yes, because my card would have been declined.
Yeah. I mean, it's really sick when you think about it, Governor Paterson. And of course, there's a lot of stuff that kind of crosses over into the conspiratorial and the uncertain and story and rumor and vague and all that. But when you consider the fact that we know some of this bad, deviant behavior is out there, and then the ability for somebody like an Epstein and whoever he's connected to profit off that, benefit off that, blackmail, honeypot, all that kind of stuff. I mean, this is the kind of thing that really has the potential to go really, really deep within dark elements of our government, society, entertainment, whatever. And I remember thinking about this years ago in regard to Sandusky and the Penn State thing.
Right.
Do people sometimes not even really want to know what the truth is behind the curtain? And in terms of Epstein and Trump and Musk and the whole thing. I just wonder if part of it is like, hey, yeah, let's see if there are some people out there who make enough of a stink and say we got to get this out there by Trump's name being invoked and supposedly dangled as it's part of it. Maybe it'll happen.
I considered that as well, but once he threw the Epstein part in, to me,
you were like, whoa,
that was way beyond the pale. If I was president and he'd done that to me, I'd have called the Secret Service and said, get this guy off the planet before the end of the day. I don't care what the consequences are.
Yeah, well, you know what? I mean, he's playing with fire there. That's for absolute sure. All right, so I guess what we're going to do is step aside, but I think we could potentially talk about some of this other stuff, Governor Paterson. Anti-Semitism on the rise. You know, not much has changed since the last time we did the show, apparently.
Right.
And also the mayoral primary this past week. Get your thoughts on that. James Flippin and Governor Paterson here on The Left.
The Left versus the Right on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Are you a forward thinker? Then you need an HR and finance platform that thinks like you do. Workday is the AI platform that helps propel your organization, your workforce, and your industry into the future. Workday, moving business forever forward.
Nurses, are you tired of spending weeks or even months finding the perfect job that matches your specialty with your ideal shift and salary? LinkedIn has improved your job search experience. Search by specialty, the shift you want to work, and the salary you want to make. Go to linkedin.com/nurses and begin searching today. That's linkedin.com/nurses.
Note, side effects may include less time finding the perfect job, working a shift that you love with a salary that can take you to St. Thomas, Jamaica, and continuous smiling because of how simple this process was.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But D.C. politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
The Left versus the Right. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to The Left versus the Right. I'm James Flippin. He's former Governor David Paterson. You know, I wanted to ask you something about that. Is it ever Dave Paterson, or is it always David?
I've always been David.
You've always been David?
No one really ever called me Dave. Although one time when I was governor, I went to this restaurant and the maitre d' said, "Dave, how are you?" I'm like, "I'm fine."
Were you, were you taken aback? Did you not like that?
I was taken aback. I wanted to be called David.
You're David.
Governor.
You want to be
There's
David.
some other names, but we can't mention them.
Oh, okay. That one's exactly. That's more on the overnight show.
Yeah.
And I was never a Jim. So, you know, it's kind of that's.
You're never a Jim.
I was
always
never
James.
a Jim. I was always a James.
Wow.
So we keep it formal on this show.
Absolutely.
Very formal. I did want to get into this, unfortunately, kind of not so nice to talk about, but of course, very, very necessary. It was almost a week ago now where you had this fire attack against people who were marching in support of the release of the Israeli hostages in Boulder, Colorado. And
last Sunday.
Yeah, it was last Sunday. And this guy got arrested and now faces all kinds of charges. They tried to kick his family out because he's from Egypt. And then it was last month, or just weeks ago now, that you had these two Israeli staff members shot to death in Washington, D.C. And it just feels like every time you turn around, there's some new instance of anti-Semitism.
The shooting in Washington a few weeks ago, I was in Qatar at the time.
Oh, okay.
And the story was reported where it was in the middle of the night, so we didn't hear it.
Right.
We're 7 hours ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw a picture of the two staff members walking together like a young couple, both of them attractive, and their whole lives in front of them.
About to get engaged, apparently.
Yeah, about to get engaged, and gets cut down that way. And the perpetrator pretends that he was shot at and runs in the building.
Yeah.
And he almost got away because they almost believed him.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened in Boulder, Colorado. Now, what's interesting about that is the family, if they're so hurt that no one will, people want to put them out of the country, why didn't they go on the record and criticize what their family member did? They never did that. I know the daughter wants to go to medical school somewhere, in the medical books. It must describe what you do when someone else was hurt and you know who did it. And it really irked me. And this anti-Semitism issue is starting to seize on itself. In other words, other people are getting involved who otherwise really wouldn't care one way or the other. And to give an example, that is Zoran Mandani, running for mayor, second in the polls to Andrew Cuomo right now, was asked if he would accept that the state of Israel is a Jewish state.
Right, as a right to exist as a Jewish state.
And what did he say?
He said they have a right to exist as a state or whatever, but he would not basically codify
that it was a Jewish state.
Specifically say that it's a Jewish state.
So in other words, Nigeria would not be a black country to him. They would just be another country.
That's fair. Yeah. In essence, he's trying to make it clear that there ought not be any sort of like specific demographic based, I guess, or I mean, you make an interesting point though, right? Or you're sort of drawing one out from me, I guess.
Yes.
Because in essence, is there a distinction to be made between Israel being a Jewish ethno-state and then some other nation or plot of land that happens to have a lot of the same people from a certain demographic living there? Like, Israel is very specifically as tied into its charter, right? The Jewish state.
Right, exactly.
And there's some level of objection that people have to that because they say, well, that's not done with other nations, for example. It's not laid out that same way. So, but it gets sticky, right? Because I mean, Palestine in and of itself, I think, is supposed to be a ethno state, right? Like it's right. For the Arab people in that area, and amongst the breakdown of the Levant, you've got Jordan, you've got Lebanon, you've got Palestine, and then various different ethnic religious groups dominate in those.
And you had 13 of those Arab states that were on their way to attacking Israel in June of 1967.
Right.
And the Israelis wiped them out.
Right.
It was a 6-day war.
Right.
And then they got blamed for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, what do you think? How does one go about combating the issue of anti-Semitism? Because I'll give you my take on the whole thing. I think that by and large, the Marxist left has an opposition to aggregations of capital, the wealthy, the private sector in general in some ways. And so the manifestation of that from a lot of people on the left, especially like the intellectual crowd, let's say, is the rich white landlord. And then they see the Jewish people of America or of the world as the rich white landlord. And it's so fascinating because there's plenty of Jewish people who would say, well, we see ourselves as a minority and we consider ourselves to be a marginalized element of society, not some super successful on the top of the heap group. And you could probably find kind of different shades of gray within that whole argument, so to speak. But what are you supposed to do to push back against somebody who, from an intellectual perspective, thinks they're really justified in feeling a certain type of way about Jewish people and the so-called genocide that's going on there in the war between Israel and Gaza?
I think that the tendency in this country had been just to look the other way. In other words, we're not in this.
Right.
They'll work it out.
Right.
But more and more people have been drawn into exactly the question that you're asking. As I'm sitting here, James, I remember this story, but it hit me that it's the first time I ever heard of anti-Semitism. I was in the 4th grade, and we were out on the playground. Now, I didn't see this, but I understand that this Jewish friend of mine named Jonathan Goodman got punched in the face by this other kid whose family had mob connections, and he called him a dirty Jew. Our teacher, who was black, and this was a mostly white neighborhood with mostly white students.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about growing up going to that school.
Yeah, that our 4th grade teacher was black. She stopped the whole, teaching process and gave us this lecture, and went on about
what year about would this have been?
1963.
Okay,
1963, right before the assassination of the president.
Yep.
And she goes on, and talks about this, and we just kind of had this sharing. Now we're only 9 or 10 years old. So
did that have a big? That had a big impact on you. That
it
that
had
lesson. You're remembering it all these years later.
Impact on me, and years later, I had a profound feeling about her for actually stopping everything and doing it. Now, one part that's kind of funny is that years later, Jonathan and I were both at Columbia University. We're talking about the old times, and I said, what about the time that guy, you got in that fight? I said, I never said it to you, but I thought you lost the fight. And he said, it could have been worse. I could have won the fight.
Yeah, right. That's true, right? That's true. No, but I mean, look, I think back to times in my life, for example, like I'll a story I've told before, I'm not sure if I've ever told it on these airwaves before, was when I was a kid, we went to a party, a family gathering at a family friend's house. And that movie, Falling Down, was on TV. The movie with Michael Douglas when he's kind of losing it and he's walking through L.A.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like a man snapping because like society's turned against him or whatever. And so this one guy at the party, and I don't know, 7 or 8 years old, they're all making comments about the movie. And the one guy says, oh, this is when he messes with the N in McDonald's.
Oh.
And I'm a little kid and I didn't really. So anyway, we're driving home later that night and my dad says something to me and I had sort of forgotten it largely.
Right.
But my dad said, I want you to know that's that guy's house. I'm not going to say anything to him in that moment, but we don't use that word. And this is why. And da-da-da-da-da. And it had such an impact on me that even though I was 7, 8 years old or whatever it was, I can remember sitting in that car talking to my father about that like it was yesterday.
Wow.
And you need those moments, right? Like you need somebody to teach you what the reality is behind some of this stuff. You need somebody to show you the pathway from anger, hurt, resentment to something that it becomes over the course of time. And what I think is so scary or kind of troubling or really hard to put your hands around with the anti-Semitism thing is that you have a lot of really well-read, informed, learned people who have sort of made this decision or determination that there is a group as organized by ethnicity, religion, whatever, that has this outsized sense of dominance. And so they're sort of worthy of criticism or rebuke or God forbid, even elements of violence. And it's really hard to put that together in my mind because like I feel like so often we use the term ignorance when it comes to things like hate and bigotry and prejudice and whatever. But almost with the anti-Semitism thing, you're fighting against people who are really quite educated sometimes.
Yes.
Who feel a certain type of way about this.
Now, I have a question for you because I really don't know the answer to this. But here in New York City, there has been a rise in the Asian population and the Asian populations in schools. So you have these situations where the Asian students are just outperforming the average student and are, winding up at, in the Hunter School and then off to, one of the major colleges and that kind of thing. And I haven't experienced or heard of too many situations where the animosity, because the Asian students are outperforming everyone, was brought back to them.
Well, it's out there, I have to tell you, and it's sad to talk about, but it's definitely a thing. Like, for example, members of the, and this is where I'm showing my political bias, but the super progressive people on the left might use the term white adjacent to describe Asian families, that they are, it's almost getting back into that Uncle Tom type argument where, oh, well, these Asian people are just trying to emulate white people and that's why they do so well. And the standards of punctuality and proper spelling and learning to read, and these are white things that only white people do. And, oh, well, the Asians are doing it now. Because if you think about it, there was the whole controversy in the last 5, 6, 7 years, I think it was, over the entrance exam for some of New York City's elite high schools.
Yes,
like
exactly.
Stuyvesant and Brooklyn Tech, and you have to be able to test in to get into these schools. But they've been pushing back against having that test because New York City officials who are of the more progressive mindset say, well, this is resulting in unfair percentages. In other words, you have too many white and Asian kids who are going to these schools, so we want to scrap this test altogether because clearly the test in and of itself is flawed. And you had a lot of Asian parents who protested at City Hall and said this isn't fair and this isn't right. And if you think about it, some of the stuff that happened during the early days of COVID where, there was definite anger in relation to it being a so-called China virus. And maybe that's where some of the violence that would have happened on subways and stuff like that was taking place. But I do think there is some of that element there, Governor Paterson, where, you talk about anti-Semitism. The one thing that's probably different, I think, is when you think about the way anti-Semitism came to be and has been so much a part of the European history and the European story going back thousands of years, it becomes maybe like it's almost a newer phenomenon where the larger elements of the Asian population are integrating into the West. And maybe there's just not so much a ingrained and historical sense of that resentment. I mean, that's the part of it that's just so baffling to me and makes it hard to really get your hands around. Is, I mean, like William Shakespeare was talking about anti-Semitism. You know what I mean? Like, and I mean, like, this is like, we're talking about old stuff here, and yet these wounds just sort of seem unable to heal themselves.
Well, now that we have introduced Shakespeare to the discussion, I think we need to take a few minutes off and hear from some of our sponsors and come back and delve a little more into Shakespeare. I think
to be or not to be on the other side of this break, that's up to you.
The left versus the right on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by SelectQuote. Life insurance can have a huge impact on our family's future. With SelectQuote, getting covered with the right policy for you is simple and affordable. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents will tailor your experience to find a life insurance policy for your needs in as little as 15 minutes. And SelectQuote partners with carriers that provide policies for many conditions. SelectQuote. They shop, you save. Go to SelectQuote.com/SpotifyPod today to get started.
The left versus the right. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Back here on the left versus the right, Governor David Paterson here in studio with me. I'm James Flippin. And this past week, Governor, we had the 9 candidates on the Democratic side come together on stage and debate the issues at hand as we're trying to determine who the next mayor of New York City is going to be. So of those 9 candidates amongst the Democrats, do you have a favorite at this point? Do you have somebody that you're tying your support to?
I'm really kind of up in the air about the whole thing. 2 of the 9, one was Michael Blake.
Yes.
I think the other was she won't qualify for the last debate, and I'm looking at her and I can't call her.
Ramos?
Yes, Ramos,
okay.
who on Friday stunned the people who
the political
care
world,
about this kind of
landscape
thing by endorsing Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah, you were surprised by that?
Well, she was from the Working Families Party.
Mm-hmm.
She always had very left leanings.
Mm-hmm.
She was a former staffer of de Blasio, and the Cuomo staff and the de Blasio staff didn't get along at all.
Yeah.
So she's going to leave her name on the ballot, but she's endorsed him yesterday. And that's kind of interesting, but I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference. I think Cuomo is going to win. I think that he debates and these types of situations, they're not really his forte. That's not who he is. What he really is an organizer. He can. I thought the structure of his office when he was governor was incredible. Every former governor is allowed to have a portrait painted of them, and it hangs in the hall of the Capitol. When he did it for me, this was such a professionally done event that you just had to nod your head. That's what his great skill is, and that's why he probably is the one most equipped to turn problems around in this city. He really is.
So in essence, you're saying that he runs a good game. He's a good politician. Like, he knows what it is to get those structures in place and maybe hire the right people and put them in the place that they need to be. And,
Well, no, I'm not even. It's not even partly a criticism. It's just there are some people who are very good organizers.
Yeah.
And they could put together a team where they wouldn't have to do everything by themselves. You know, that kind of thing. And I see him as one of those people.
It seems like there's people on both sides of the political divide that kind of look at it that way, right? Like, you have this argument that, oh, well, at least Cuomo knows what he's doing. At least Cuomo's been there before, like that kind of thing. But I just have to wonder, is that really the right way to determine who should be the mayor of New York City? Like, the policies, the priorities, the things that you tend to want to focus on really ought be the focus for me. And I guess that's where I struggle to look at him as this centrist solution or whatever.
That's an excellent point, James, because this whole idea, and Elliot Spitzer used to do this, if you want to get rid of the bad people, you get a bad guy to do it.
Right.
He will play the bad guy. And I've heard that in this campaign, even from people who were supporting the former governor, that, he knows how to run the place.
Right.
But when he runs the place, what result do you want?
Right.
And I think that's what factors into the campaign. Now, the person second in the polls right now is Zoran Mondani. I don't understand how that's actually possible. And with ranked choice voting, I think I would like to have a seance with Albert Einstein. You know, we brought up Shakespeare before. I think
we're bringing Einstein.
We need
in.
Einstein.
Okay, I like this.
Because I think I would understand nuclear physics before I understand ranked choice voting. I am throwing my hand up. I'm not even trying.
And I'd like to just say thanks a lot to old friend, now City Councilman Frank Morano, for pushing that stupid cockamamie ranked choice voting, which, makes no sense at all. And supposedly, Governor, what the Zoran Mamdani people are doing is pushing this whole idea that their supporters should leave Cuomo off the ballot entirely. Now, that could make a really significant difference if they get momentum behind that, because with the way ranked choice voting works is it's not even necessarily that important. Do you get put first on somebody's ballot, whatever, as long as you're on somebody's ballot and then your supporters are ranking you first. So when you get the percentage points added, the best I can think of it is it's almost like when they vote for MVP in sports, right? You get the chance to put like 5 people on your ballot. So you might end up in second place, even though not that many people really had you put as their second choice vote, but you were on everybody's ballot, you were third or something.
Good comparison.
Like that. So, you get a lot of these first place votes, second place votes, third place votes. You add it all together. What kind of support do you get? If Cuomo is not getting any third or fourth place votes and he's getting his significant supporters to vote for him number one, it could end up screwing him over with this whole thing.
I had Curtis on the show last week, and we were talking.
That must have been a treat.
Yeah, it was.
Sorry.
Anyway, we were
your husband-in-law.
My husband-in-law. We were talking about the fact that in 2021, Adams finished with 107,000 vote lead, and after all the ranked choice voting came in the primary, he was at 7,000. So no one could even rationalize how that actually would have happened.
Right.
And Catherine Garcia almost became the mayor from that. And there's nothing wrong with Catherine Garcia. I'm just saying that's how close this could come.
Yeah.
When now in November, we're going to have a regular election. There'll be a Republican candidate. There'll be a Democratic candidate. There'll probably be an independent candidate.
Correct.
And
then maybe even somebody else on the Working Families Party
right,
line.
And Mayor Adams will probably run on his own line, where I think Mayor Adams he had to take the independent line because he didn't have enough time after the charges were dropped against him to try to wage a campaign in the Democratic primary.
Yeah, well, he made the decision, I guess, not to start doing that when he was still under the cloud of indictment, because the deadline for him to sort of do that and get himself on the ballot for the primary was kind of coming up against that time when they finally did drop the charges. How are you handicapping?
And then, unfortunately, I think that when you go to an independent line, no matter who you are, you kind of automatically,
put yourself out of the
running.
running.
You look at the voting machine, you're down on the ballot.
Right.
Some people, they just come in and vote for the one person they want to vote for and leave.
If it was ranked choice voting in the general election, then maybe it would be different having an independent in the mix.
Please, James, don't let Frank Morano
forget
hear
that
about
I said anything.
Don't listeners, please.
Yeah, delete
Don't
that tape.
repeat what we just said.
Yeah, Eric, you could just cut that
If we could delete this right now, we would.
No, but seriously, I think that the reality behind it is, so are you in essence saying you kind of handicap the race as whichever one of the person with the R next to their name and the D next to their name, it's going to be one of those two when it all shakes out?
Yeah, when it all shakes out. Now, Adrienne Adams decided to run. I think she could have been a pretty good candidate, but I think she started too late.
Yeah. So
she started too late.
So are you kind of predicting it as Cuomo Sliwa? You think is going to be the general election showdown?
I think it's Cuomo, Sliwa, and Adams
as the independent
would be the independent.
And then in essence, it's probably a race to get to like 30% at that point.
Yes, exactly. And this is what Curtis spent.
He keeps banging
45 minutes of the left versus the right.
Exactly, saying I had 33% last time.
And that number keeps going up, by the way. And he is just so sure that this is what's going to elect him mayor.
Well, look, I would just like to come out and say that I'm 100% supporting Curtis in this. I think that he would be great. I think a guy who loves the city as much as he does, cares about it as much as he does, there's a lot to be said for that. And I think a guy like Donald Trump, even though they don't always see eye to eye, Trump and Sliwa, there's a lot of similarities there for me. Trump came in not knowing what it was to run a government, not really being a politician, but having a deep love of country, a deep love of its people, a deep love of what it can accomplish and how much believing in it. And I think that, to me, that's Curtis. I think that he really does believe in New York City and all that it has to offer and all its cosmopolitan energy. He just feels like it has to be refined. And I think back to Cuomo, I say, okay, cool. He knows how to run the show and he could be good at doing that. But I worry about congestion pricing and how he supported that before, then he backed against it, and now he likes it again. And cashless bail. He was pushing cashless bail, and now he says, "Oh, the crime's a problem." And it's like, well, there's no consistency there. And I will say that there's some positive feeling for me because you make a good point. Cuomo and De Blasio clashed a lot, and I think that was partly because Cuomo felt that De Blasio governed from the left too often and too far to the left.
Right.
And Cuomo tried his best to sometimes come back to the middle in an ability to build a coalition and get things done in that respect.
You know what I think about a number of these candidates is that things do change. And sometimes you really do change your mind. You know, there were some issues that, I changed my mind over time. And you should say that.
Right.
That's how you don't have to be called, wishy-washy or dishonest or whatever it is, because you don't want it to look like you're going to throw a beach ball up in the air and see which way the wind blows it. What you really want is to let people know that, something, I've decided. I know I did cashless bail. Let's say it was Andrew Cuomo, for example. I know I did cashless bail, but man, the crime is increasing logarithmically. I got to do something like that. We're going to have to start with those who've already been arrested and make sure that that they understand what bail is and pay for it before they get it.
The politicians of the world, Governor Paterson, it really does seem like they struggle with that concept. And I don't know if it's just the day and age of knowing that the video of you saying the one thing is going to be juxtaposed with the video of you saying it now, and that's such a killer campaign ad, and oh my gosh, it's going to go viral on social media, and they're never going to let me get over it because I said sorry or because I fixed my mind on this and I changed it and whatever. I don't know, but it really does seem...
Well, my view is that that's how you combat somebody showing you from 2017 saying something, and then here you are 2021 railing against it. That you have the right to tell the public, you know what, I changed my mind. And people could say that's opportunistic, but we all change our minds about a lot of things through life. And I don't think that...
Yeah, what do you have to say basically? What you've never changed your mind on anything? You've never gone back on something you thought before?
Right, exactly. What did I change my mind about? I can't remember.
You used to hate tuna fish, and now you like tuna fish.
Yeah, something like that. That type of thing. Well, I was a big advocate for the charter schools.
Okay.
At a certain point. And then, and also in other states, some of these arrangements just didn't work out.
What was it about?
And then the very wealthy people ran away from it. And now I can't say that, I'm...
You think it's just sort of a flawed structure?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not as enthusiastic about it as I used to be.
Well, I mean, I'm certainly in favor of the general broad school choice idea.
Concept, yes.
Yeah, mostly because I think that anytime you have that, locked in sort of de facto monopoly with the town and the state and the school that you have to go to, and then the teachers union gets involved, and it's kind of a mess. And unfortunately, it hasn't really advanced education as much as you would think, given the dollars that we spend. But I do think that there are some elements of charter school that can be sort of problematic because it can be abused in its own way. It can be rife with fraud and problematic things.
Yeah. I don't think it was...
Superintendents getting paid, whatever, and driving the fancy car, and they set their own salary or whatever,
Exactly. But I do think that this is... I just watch candidates, like, for instance, they all ganged up on Andrew Cuomo in the debate last, I guess it was Wednesday night. Well, the more you gang up on an individual, the more a little part of you Roots for the individual. Like, how can all 8 of them yell at the same time?
So you found yourself saying, "Get him, Andrew, get him."
Yeah, I did.
Well, you know what?
And he pretty much did that.
He kind of did. Yeah, he kind of did. We'll see. Zoran Mamdani is going to continue to try to charge ahead. And, Michael Blake at least supported the Knicks firing of Thibs. So I was kind of happy to see him do that because we want to win a championship, Governor Patterson. It's not enough to just get to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Sooner or later.
Yeah, we'll see. Is that a houndstooth suit? That's a beautiful suit you're wearing, as a matter of fact. I just wanted to note that. All right, well, that's a little bit of our sartorial spirit on the left versus the right. And I'm James Flippin. It was so great to be back with you, Governor Patterson.
Well,
really
James,
fun.
We've got to do it again.
And hopefully we shall. And coming up next, Vinny Medugno with music, right?
John Sterling.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Coming up next, John Sterling.
It's high. It's far. It's
gone.
Thanks for listening to The Left versus the Right. You can hear The Left versus the Right Saturday afternoons at 4. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?